Welcome to the Remembering a Life podcast. I'm your host, Holly Ignatowski, and today we're talking about green funerals and natural burial. Not too long ago, green funerals were a relatively foreign concept to many of us, but increasingly, families are choosing these eco-friendly options when saying goodbye and laying a loved one to rest. My guests today are Bob Prout and Julia Prout from the Prout Funeral Home in Verona, New Jersey. As leaders in the green funeral space, Bob and the staff have established Prout Funeral Home as the premier provider of green funerals in the northern New Jersey area and a national leader in sustainable funeral practices. Bob is co-owner and senior director of the funeral home, and he's joined by his daughter, Julia, who is a licensed funeral director. Welcome, Bob and Julia. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having us on. We enjoy being able to spread the word about natural burials.
Absolutely.
Bob, I'm going to start with you, just with the basics. What is a green funeral?
A green funeral is a funeral in its very basic forms. What you can do many times with a green funeral, people who have established family plots that go back a couple generations would like to stay in that family plot, but would like to have as green an impact as possible. With that in mind, we can switch caskets from a wood or a metal casket to a casket that's both biodegradable as well as sustainably grown. There are non-formaldehyde means of preservation. And basically, if the cemetery does not require the use of a concrete burial vault, you can have about as green a funeral as you want in an established cemetery plot. And even if they do require a concrete burial vault, there are options like having a vault that's open on the bottom, or even just taking a traditional vault and turning it upside down. That would satisfy the cemetery requirements of concrete, but allow you to return to nature in as quick a manner as possible.
So that was one of my questions. If I wanted to be buried in the same cemetery as my parents who, died many, many years ago, and there was not a green funeral option, I can still do that and have a green funeral?
Yes, you can certainly have a green funeral, a much greener, and there are very many shades of green, so you can have as green a funeral as you would like within the confines of what the cemetery requirements might be.
And let's distinguish between green funeral and natural burial. First of all, could one of you give me a definition of a natural burial?
Sure. I'd say a natural burial is certainly getting back to the very basics, the fundamentals. We like to say it's more of the purest form of green, purest of the pure. There's absolutely no embalming. Typically, you are wrapped in a shroud and placed directly into the ground, so no concrete burial vault. And most natural burials take place in a specifically natural burial preserve.
Okay. And Bob, you had mentioned that there are different shades of green options available. Now, we can take this as far as a green funeral and include all the elements of the funeral, including the kind of food that's served or the flowers. Is that right?
Very definitely. On a greener funeral service, you would be looking for flowers that may have been grown close to the funeral location or to where the family is living. You would be looking for food, flowers that are more local. You would be looking for native pine, native to your particular state, or the sustainably grown caskets. So there are a lot of different options, and everything can revolve around the fact that it is more locally grown, locally consumed type of products.
What about the funeral procession? I know that's a big deal, going from the funeral home to the place of worship and or the cemetery. Can you still have a funeral procession with a green funeral?
The procession would be fine. It's actually better if they were all Teslas or hybrids, obviously. Right. Many of and to be more serious, the fact of the matter is that people that are looking for a natural burial or a greener funeral are way ahead of most funeral homes. The people that are looking for a funeral like this are already very much recycling. They're very much living a life where they're living a little quieter or treading a little bit lighter on the planet. more than likely the folks that are looking for a natural burial or a green funeral will not be coming in a Suburban or a Tahoe. They're already driving sustainably oriented type of vehicles. The other thing that you could do is hire an electric bus, which they're coming out with now, and have a bunch of people going to the cemetery all under one roof.
Is cremation a green option for people?
Cremation is an option. It is obviously greener than a mausoleum entombment. It's greener than many of the traditional, conventional funerals of the day. It is not as green as a natural burial. And the reason being that you still have a lot of fuel that is being emitted into the air just to perform the cremation. You've also got the release of mercury. If you have any fillings, some of those fillings will
Interesting.
burn off, so to speak, and go into the air. The cemeteries that have crematories or the crematories that are freestanding, by and large, don't have the scrubbers that is really required to make it as clean a process as possible. So while it is a greener option, it is certainly not the greenest of options.
Aside from the obvious reasons we just mentioned, why would someone choose a green funeral or natural burial? Is there another reason?
I think what ends up happening is people at a time of crisis will just revert back to what they've experienced recently or grew up with. For folks that have looked into it, for folks that are pre-planning their own funerals, for folks that are aware of being green in their lifestyle, this is simply just an extension of that lifestyle, so it's not even a second thought. Many people are not even aware of the fact that natural burials and green funerals can take place in any state in the Union. There's no problem. There's no legal prohibitions against it. And it's through things like this podcast, through newspaper articles, that word gets out. And once word gets out, then more people sit back and say, it's something that I might like to consider for myself as well. But again, many people, especially if it's a sudden death, they just automatically revert to whatever they've known in the past.
Can families have a traditional viewing and a visitation if they do the green funeral?
Absolutely. We have had, especially considering that there are various shades of green, but even with a natural burial, where there's no embalming, wrapped in a shroud and placed in the ground, we have had instances where families want to come to the funeral home, have some private family time before we head out to the cemetery, and that's absolutely doable. I understand it can get a little bit more difficult with, depending on cause of death, but for the most part, it is definitely doable.
You mentioned embalming. Is that an option for a natural burial? How is the body prepared?
That can take many different forms, and the embalming process, if you were to embalm a body, you would use a solution that's made more of either the essential oils or various means of methyl alcohol, and you would be skipping the use of a formaldehyde or even a glutaraldehyde, which are severely more toxic. Now, while formaldehyde would readily break down in the soil, it's still considered a fairly toxic material. And there are other means of preservation besides having the traditional embalming. You can use refrigeration, depending on the causes of death and the condition of the body. You can use refrigeration. You can use dry ice. There are just 3 or 4 different means of preservation to get to the point of having a visiting and or a service at your funeral home or a local church here or a synagogue, wherever. Having a natural burial is fairly common in many parts of the world, most parts of the world, as a matter of fact. And having the body present for the service or the ritual is standard procedure in most parts of the world. So there's absolutely no problem having having a visiting, having a service, and having the body present.
I think that's important to note that we're considering this sort of a novel idea here in the United States and Canada, but as my father mentioned, in many parts of the world, in most major religions, this is nothing new. This is standard procedure. But these are also practices that have been around for centuries. I mean, you look back at mortuary history, and bodies were preserved with ice. So it's really not a new concept. I think that with our more modern-day training in mortuary schools, it seems very different and almost foreign, but it's just sort of retraining yourself as an embalmer and just looking at it at a different way. But it's really nothing new and different.
Well, that brings up a good point then. Are these green funerals and natural burials available throughout the U.S.? Can anybody go to any funeral home in the country and get a green or shade of green funeral or natural burial?
You would hope so at this point in time. You would hope that most funeral homes are aware of the fact that natural burials and greener funerals would be something that the general population, the general consumer, would be interested in. Many funeral homes might not want to engage in it or might not feel comfortable engaging it, but it should be available pretty much at any funeral home that you were to call anywhere in the country. Their levels of comfort might be different. Their levels of knowledge of local cemeteries that would allow a totally natural burial might be a little off, but that's just a matter of getting funeral homes up to speed.
I don't mean to oversimplify this, but can I just Google green funerals or natural burials in my area?
That you could do. There are funeral homes that have, as we have, kind of a specialty niche within natural burials and green funerals. So if you were to Google, you would probably find one of those firms that would have a better than average passing knowledge as far as natural or green. There are things like the Green Burial Council that has vetted out some of the funeral homes, as well as the National Funeral Directors Association have the green practices, a certificate that if a firm has been recognized by NFDA, that is a vetting in and of itself as well.
What about the grave marker? Is a traditional grave marker considered something green, or does that look different as well?
It definitely looks different. So for a natural burial, what most cemeteries will do, especially in the Northeast where there's a more rocky terrain, is that if you find a particular stone nearby, that they will engrave that. Other families I know have gotten very creative with how they mark the grave. They might mark it with different native plants. Up in New York State, they might plant some blueberry bushes. Down in South Jersey in the Pine Barrens, they've planted saplings that are native to that area and would be found in that forest anyway as a special way to mark the grave. So it's just, again, it's getting creative. It's thinking outside the box a little bit more. But there are definite ways to mark the grave, and sometimes people don't want to mark them with anything specific, and they just want to let the land grow free, and that's fine too. But those cemeteries have all geotagged and marked out the plot. So, if the generations go down the line want to go and visit the plot, they can always contact the cemetery, and they have those records, and they'll be able to show them using GPS coordinates exactly where, great-great-grandma was laid to rest.
Interesting. Like similar to what we can do now with a traditional, but knowing that was one of my questions, how long will we find a marker of a loved one? How many generations? Is it the same as the traditional? I don't know what that is, if it's 100 years, but this will still be, there will be a marker in history to go find someone that you have on your family tree.
Absolutely, and sometimes it's quite literally the family tree, if you're planting the saplings. But I think what's sort of poignant about that is it's combining the old tradition of a natural burial with the new technology. I mean, you go to some of the older cemeteries around here, and the grave markers are all worn. It's tough to figure out who's where. all of the old cemetery records were in the previous superintendent's head. He kept them all up in his head. He didn't write anything down, and when he went, all the records went. So it's harder to find your loved one. But here, in this instance, in this day and age, all those records are also kept digitally. You can find them using GPS and the different tags that the cemetery has set when they set out the plot coordinates.
You've got to keep in mind also that any of the cemeteries, the natural burial cemeteries that I'm aware of, are also registered as cemeteries with the different states that they work in, simply meaning that there is a regulatory body overseeing them. Many of these cemeteries are required to have an endowment fund so that any profits or a portion of the sale of the grave will go into an endowment so that even after that property is totally full, it'll always be maintained. And the neat part about a true natural burial cemetery is that they use the profits or the income stream that is generated through burial, they're using as a means of land preservation. In this day and age, a lot of the grant money and the seed money for open space preservation is getting tougher and tougher to come by, whether it be coming out of Washington or coming from your state capitals, or any grants from different endowments through nonprofits is getting quite difficult to get a hold of. Most any entity will generate an income stream, whether it be the Red Cross, whether it be your local rescue squad, whether it be a church. What they're doing is they're using the income stream to purchase more land and to keep that land open and green. So not only is it being used as a burial ground, but there'll always be, in many of these places, passive recreation. There'll always be hikers. There'll always be birders. There'll always be cross-country skiers. Some cemeteries I know will also allow camping. So it's a whole different concept, but it'll always be there. Your family grave will always be there, and it'll always be open and green.
There's something really peaceful and comforting about what you just said, where your loved one is buried and what's going to happen in the generations. I know that the Remembering a Life Book Club Book of the Month for April is Nature Heals, Reconciling Your Grief Through Engaging with the Natural World by Dr. Alan Wolfelt. And I had a chance to read it, and we've all heard that nature is very healing, but it brought up a lot of good points, just even spending a couple minutes a day outside, even looking out of a window and seeing a tree outside your window can have really healing and calming effects. So does this help? Do you find this helps a little bit more with the mourning process, or it might influence the mourning process for people?
Oh, 100%. I think, just watching families walk away from a natural burial, they walk away more uplifted, more feeling at peace than they do in a typical traditional burial. There's definitely something different about the feeling, and we've even had clergy remark to us who they may not have personally known the family or known the deceased, but they said even they felt that there's just something different and there's something special, and it's sort of hard to put into words. It's just that visceral feeling. And I think everybody's experienced this pandemic. Everybody's experienced lockdown. I think a lot more people today can relate to that feeling. Think about how many people break up their day by going for a walk outside. They want to get out of the house. They just wanted to get out and find some peace. Maybe they went to their park when the park opened. I think that that's sort of a feeling that more and more people can relate to. Even pre-pandemic, I was reading an article, I want to say it was in National Geographic, but they were talking about how cities in Japan would bus residents out into parks and into nature preserves for what they call tree bathing. And it was just sort of a way for people to, slow down, to relax. And their studies were finding that it leads to a more productive workforce. People are more in tune with their health and by being out in nature, and it just has that intense calming impact that they found so beneficial that they were literally busing people into the woods just to sit amongst the trees for a few hours.
I truly believe that. Like you said, with the pandemic, we've all been spending a little bit more time outside, and it's been very healing, and it probably saved a lot of us.
To your point also, when you look around, how many people go skiing, how many people go jogging, running, how many people are involved in camping, just going in. All of our national parks over the past 2 or 3 years have been just swamped with people wanting to get out. And Wolford quotes in his book, "I go to nature to be soothed, healed, and to have my senses put in order." And when do you need your senses to be put in order more than at a time of trauma, at a time of death? And a natural burial and a greener funeral allows you to go into nature and to help move your grief along and to help put your senses in order. What you're doing with a natural burial is going into nature with the core of the family as your support, and you're trying to take that first step of grief, but within the bathing of nature.
Beautiful. Tell me about your facility. I understand that it is solar-powered.
Back in 2004, I read an article on page 90 of our local North Jersey paper, and to show you how many years ago that was, how many pages are your papers now? that 90 pages long, and that was only the middle of the paper. There was an article about the New Jersey Clean Energy Program offering incentives to anybody that would be willing to put up solar or convert to solar. I looked into it, and I was skeptical at first. I kept thinking that it was kind of like snake oil in the Old West, and decided to go along with it. The program paid for itself within 5 years. The funeral home was one of the first of the commercial buildings in this area, first of any buildings, to go solar. We're about 90% off the grid. When we have a good day, we're generating all the power that we need, plus sending power out into the grid. You stay tied to the grid. And at night, when the sun goes down or on stormy days, we buy from the grid, but we pay for it with the credits that have been banked all along. That has been up 16 years. It's not like we're living in a cave. We don't have to turn our lights out. The other thing that you can do, even if you don't want to go solar, the one thing that you can do to be a little bit greener and to go within the movement, just make sure that you've converted all of your lighting over to LED lighting. That saves an incredible amount on your electric bill and reduces your footprint completely, as well as having pretty much better lighting. And just to make sure that any of your furnaces, air conditioning, insulation is all up to current standards. Because, again, that all will save money within a couple of years. It's a deduction just to put it in, and it's going to save you money so that you're reducing your bill along the way.
So you are truly completely green and natural in every sense of the word.
Well, we try to be. We have an electric car. We have the solar. We've tried to upgrade our furnaces. We've tried to update the hot water heater. We've switched our lighting over. We try to use some more natural cleaning products and to walk the walk.
Right. One final question for both of you. I'll start with you, Bob. Who are you remembering today?
I would have to say either my grandfather or my father. I think that they would both were funeral directors. I think that they would be absolutely amazed at the world that we live in today. They would be incredibly amazed at the horrific year that we've just gone through as far as the COVID-19, the pandemic. I think they would be very pleased to see that my daughter, their granddaughter and great-granddaughter would be running the funeral home at this point. So I think of them often and just wonder what they would say when they see all that's gone on in funeral service as well as in the family dynamic that's still running the funeral home.
Very nice. Julia?
Well, I was actually going to say my grandfather, my father's father. We had a very special relationship, and a large part of what motivated me to become a licensed funeral director was, the long talks we would have about his own experiences growing up in the funeral industry and going out and trying accounting and realizing that his true calling was back here in funeral service, and that resonated and inspired me to join the family business.
He would be so proud if he could see you now and what you both accomplished.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you both, Bob Prout and Julia Prout from the Prout Funeral Home in Verona, New Jersey, for being my guest today. This has been very enlightening. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Holly.
Thank you for joining us today. For more information about green funerals, natural burials, and grieving the death of a loved one, visit rememberingalife.com. And to purchase the Remembering a Life Book of the Month, Nature Heals by Dr. Alan Wolfelt, visit rememberingalife.com/store.